in general, and also in Asia Pacific, the statelessness work is not led by people who are actually affected by it, and is largely led by people with, what we would like to call the learned experience of statelessness. So, so the main sort of vision or main sort of value that we have is to strengthen the participation of persons with lived experience. And our main sort of four core work areas are partnership building, knowledge building, where sort of SEAP lies well, and then there's coalition building and there's advocacy. So before sort of speaking about SEAP, I wasn't sure of the audience and whether it'd be necessary to sort of provide some context on statelessness or prepare the slide regardless. To give a very sort of quick overview on statelessness. And these are some of the terminologies that I'll be using throughout the session. And also these would be key to understand the SEAP project as well. Adil, did you have anything to say? Just saw you.
No, I thought just to sort of give you a sense of, I think the audience here would have a good sense of this, but it's good you sort of mark this out. But okay. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff you can.
Oh, great to know that. So I'm going to skip that, and then, but I think it'd still be helpful to mention that, when we use these terms in the SEAP report or the SEAP project, we have sort of defined, or we've used certain definitions, and we've left, because it's so ambiguous in this, so it's not the best definition, and it's so contextual as well, de facto, de jure, stateless, and so I think, but I wanted to make sure that, these are some of these are reference points, and we don't use the term stateless person lightly. We've used references from UNHCR, reports, and we've been very careful in how we use these terms. So SEAP, how all of this began, and so when SNAP transitioned to NFA, we were like, oh, we need to sort of identify our priorities, we need to identify our issues, and we need to identify partners we want to work with. So we undertook a sort of comprehensive mapping exercise to identify, to better understand the laws and the stateless populations in Asia Pacific region, but also identify different civil society organizations we want to partner with. So this whole exercise sort of went on for over a year, and then we sort of did complete the mapping exercise and identified the potential partners, sort of had a discussion with them, and zeroed down on 4 organizations we wanted to partner with. Then we realized we have so much data, we have so much information on statelessness in the region. So it was then decided that we should maybe sort of make this information accessible to everyone. This is going to be really helpful. And one of the biggest things we learned in the mapping exercise was that it was extremely challenging to get the data. There's so limited information available on statelessness online, but also so limited information available in national contexts when we sort of reached out to our former members of SNAP or with civil society organizations working in those countries as well. So we realized, I think, a database or a repository of information on statelessness would be extremely helpful. And this, we put in more work into this, and then we sort of published the first edition of the SEAP report in May 2023, largely, and I don't want to pretend to be sort of, taking credit for all of that, because it was because of the hard work of the team members, some of whom are present here, who have put in their heart and soul into this project and contributed 3 years of their life to sort of making this happen, which was finally launched in May 2023. And then we published the second edition very recently at the World Conference on Statelessness in February 2024, where we sort of updated the first edition, but also added more information. The first edition had information only on 4 sub-regions and did not have country fact sheets. So now the new edition, the second edition, has country fact sheets, covers all the 5 sub-regions: Central Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific, and has additional information on UPR recommendations, including observations from treaty bodies, and birth registration as well. And now 2024, we'll be launching the sort of updating this edition to work on the third edition, which will include information on digital identity and sort of legal identity and laws and challenges related to those. So I don't want to repeat this because I already covered it. The rationale, I think, because there was limited data available, also very limited visibility of the statelessness problem, despite the fact that Asia Pacific has the highest number of reported stateless persons in the world, and based on regional classification, and which is a severe undercount, to say the least. And also in the mapping process, we also found out there are very few organizations working specifically on statelessness, and even fewer organizations that are led by stateless persons or persons who lived experience of statelessness or persons who are impacted by statelessness and unequal nationality laws. So we wanted to kind of highlight their work, also, sort of centralize the data that is available in different resources, but more largely, generate more attention and possibly more resources to address or end statelessness in the region. So methodology, so we did a lot of desk research. We also did a survey, collaborated with other organizations. Initially, it wasn't for the SEAP report. Like I said, it was meant to be an internal mapping exercise. Did some consultations as well with some stakeholders. And then we did some bilateral meetings with, initially it was meant to be to identify our partners. Then we ended up sort of validating the information, getting more understanding of the national context, but also more importantly, trying to understand how a sort of a report or a database on statelessness would be helpful for national organizations, because that is the most important component, or that's the most important rationale why we wanted to do this, where we want this document or this database to be helpful for organizations. And one of the one sort of lesson that we have learned is a dense 300-page or like 350-page report might not be the most sort of reader-friendly tool. So then we decided to put our effort into preparing a website, which we are launching pretty soon, actually. So that's and that's, I guess, the main sort of rationale behind this. And then we also been working on UPR submissions and other human rights submissions to different treaty bodies on nationality rights, where we had this opportunity to engage with national organizations, and that also sort of informed the SEAP outcome. So, the scopes, I don't want to again go into the details, but we decided to focus on maybe, I think, more than the scope. This next slide would be more helpful. So in the detailed version of the SEAP report, there are two versions, the detailed version and the shortened version. The shortened version, we have it available on print as well, and we've been sharing the printed version with participants. We recently shared with the Participants of the World Conference. It's available in a few copies if someone at the center wants a few copies as well. But the detailed version is only available online. So the way it's structured, it has the information on laws, population, and causes of statelessness. And at the end, we have a section called stakeholders, which includes the different civil society organizations, academic organizations, and individuals and activists working on this issue. And the level of detail for each country or each sub-region varies depending on the availability of information and also the partnerships we were able, the partners we were able to work with. But at the same time, we try to make sure that there's some uniformity in the way it's structured. There's several sort of the causes are different. The way population is divided, it's different. The laws are different as well. But we wanted to have a uniform structure for us to be able to compare countries, but also to understand the nuances of each country as well. Okay, now to the slightly drier part of the presentation. Lots of information on statelessness. I will make sure, I'll try my best to make sure that it's not very stats heavy and not just talking about countries, because I feel really I feel it's extremely unfair to label countries, oh, this country has this particular provision, this country, or number of countries have these provisions, because each country has their own context. And the context will be completely missing when I sort of categorize countries into, oh, number of countries have this particular provision, or number of countries do not have this provision. So I would suggest and request all of you to go through the report, and especially the country fact sheets, to get a better sense. And through this presentation, when I sort of talk about these countries, I'll present an example of Nepal, and to kind of show how some of the things that I've mentioned in the regional and the sub-regional overview, lack some of those contexts as well. So in terms of the laws and the citizenship laws of the 45 countries that we sort of studied, we found that most countries have, or most countries' citizenship laws operate through the principle of jus sanguinis, or citizenship by descent, which again, there's not a strict distinction between jus sanguinis or jus soli, which is citizenship by birth, because many countries require, if the parents or either of the parents are born in this country or they're born overseas, they can acquire citizenship through either of their parents. So it's a mixture of different laws, but most countries did sort of have, most sort of elements of the jus sanguinis, whereas only 14 countries had some elements of jus soli, but very few countries had like pure jus soli citizenship by birth, which is very, in Asia Pacific, we found it to be extremely rare compared to other parts of the world. So, again, don't want to go line by line, but just maybe focus on two countries there, Bhutan and Myanmar, where it requires both parents to be citizens born within the territory, outside of the territory. So, which are, I think, very different cases to other countries, where you normally require one parent or at least the father to be the citizen. Brunei, Myanmar, and Palau also contain sort of restrictions based on ethnicity, and which we can sort of say that the laws discriminate against certain ethnic groups. But again, so the type of discrimination, the conditions are very different in each country. The other sort of important component is Brunei, Kiribati, Malaysia, Singapore, and Nepal have certain provisions that discriminate against women to pass on their nationality to their children in the same capacity as men, and one of the biggest reasons for statelessness in some of those countries. We also sort of focused on naturalization for stateless persons, and found there's only 6 states that have expedited procedure. It's extremely, it's there, but in practice, it's highly complicated, and you can't sort of say for certain that these are properly implemented as well. And the other sort of aspect is there's dual nationality is permitted in only 10 countries in the region. The other thing we studied was the treaty ratification of the relevant human rights treaties and stateless and refugee treaties as well. So found that only 7 countries are parties to the 1954 Statelessness Convention, and only 5 countries are parties to the 1961 Convention. And even though all countries have ratified the Convention on the Rights of Child, there's still statelessness is a major issue, in Article 7 of the CRC sort of protects right to nationality of children. But despite that, those laws are not translated into practice, and there's about statelessness and even all throughout the region. Also wanted to sort of quickly point out CEDAW and ICCPR and ICERD as well, because those are also relevant treaties. You'll see sort of varying degrees of ratification, but it's a high ratification of CEDAW. So again, in terms of population, the categorization that we have used is reported stateless persons. When we say reported stateless persons, this is based on the UNHCR Global Trends report, and which UNHCR also acknowledges and concedes that is not representative of the actual number of stateless people in the region, and remains a severe undercount. Witness sort of evidence by the fact that 21 countries did not report stateless persons, or reported 0 stateless persons to UNHCR in 2022. So the total number of, is given as 2.5 million at the end of 2022. Out of them, 1.4 million people were reported in Southeast Asia alone. And also 3 of the 5 largest of the stateless, again, I'm use the word hosting, which is an extremely unfair term. I mean, for the lack of a better term. So 3 of the countries that sort of have where, highest number of stateless persons reside in the region: Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Thailand. And so the classification in terms of, in situ or ex situ statelessness is an in situ was a stateless person who never left their country of birth. There are 1.3 million persons. Majority of them sort of from the Rohingya community or the Hill tribe community in Thailand. And then there are over 1 million stateless refugees, and again, a majority of them the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. So this is a sort of a trend of how the stateless population or reported stateless population sort of changed over the last 4 years. So again, causes of statelessness. So one of the biggest causes we found was discriminatory nationality laws, where certain ethnic groups, certain provided nationality unconditionally, whereas certain ethnic groups are always at the constant risk of being stateless because of a number of reasons. I mean, the law itself being discriminatory, or the arbitrary or discriminatory application of law based on ethnicity, and also sort of additional administrative barriers or additional evidences or documents to be submitted for certain ethnic groups. So those reasons sort of being one of the major reasons behind statelessness in the region in general, and written down some of the communities that face these issues. And restriction based on gender as well. These 4 main countries that have gender discriminatory nationality laws and have resulted, and unsurprisingly, so Nepal is one of the countries that has a huge number of stateless persons. The other thing is also, the laws not having the legal safeguards to protect against childhood statelessness, and this includes protections for foundlings, and also protection for children who would otherwise be stateless, which can include children born to stateless parents, children born to one stateless parent as well. So very few countries have the legal safeguards to ensure that people who are foundlings or born to stateless parents would be able to access citizenship. There have also been cases of citizenship stripping, which is the case of they were citizens before and now they're not anymore because of an arbitrary policy that has stripped their citizenship away. Recently, we've seen this in India with the NRC, or the National Register of Citizens process, where a lot of people who were not included in the NRC, they're at the risk of statelessness now, and some of them have been declared by the foreigner tribunals to be foreigners, and so many of them are sort of still in a state of limbo. Bhutan sort of had this a long time ago, and they're still sort of facing the consequences of people from the Lokshampas, sort of their citizenship being completely stripped away. And there's sort of history in Japan and in Indonesia and Sri Lanka as well. The other sort of common cause we found was the administrative barriers. The administrative barriers was, again, related to the bureaucrats sort of exercising a lot of discretion due to ambiguous or unclear laws, and them having a huge role in determining who gets citizenship, who does not get citizenship. Now, I think I've spent enough time on the regional overview, and I'll kind of now sort of run through the sub-regional and the national overview. The sub-regional overview of South Asia sort of kind of includes very similar information, but I will not be spending too much time on this. So 8 countries in the South Asian sub-region. Afghanistan and Bhutan sort of have this provision that you can get automatic citizenship if both parents are citizens, but if either only one parent is citizen, there are certain conditions imposed. In Bhutan, it's sort of not possible even if one parent is citizen. In Bangladesh and Pakistan, they have jus soli and jus sanguinis structures. They have certain conditional jus soli, but based on we've recently worked on UPR recommendations for both countries. What we found was the implementation of the citizenship by birth is highly questionable, and it's hardly sort of practiced. India, Maldives, and Nepal have discriminatory laws, either gender or based on ethnicity, which is again a major reason for statelessness. And South Asia is one of those countries where none of the countries sort of define a stateless person in their citizenship laws, and very few countries have naturalization process for stateless persons or even refugees. I think again, sort of the treaty ratification is sort of is very similar to the regional overview as well. All the countries have ratified CRC. None of the countries have ratified the Statelessness Convention. Only Afghanistan is a party to the Refugee Convention. And in terms of reported stateless population, Bangladesh sort of hosting one of the highest stateless populations in the world. Again, it's interesting that UNHCR has noted that they have no reliable information on a certain number of countries in Asia Pacific, which includes 6 countries, and out of those 6, 5 of them are in South Asia. So Afghanistan, Bhutan, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and China. So out of those 6 countries, 5 of them sort of being in South Asia sort of represents that the numbers that are indicated is just not the actual number of stateless persons in the South Asian region. And one can sort of argue, or can be estimated as a huge number of stateless people. And I'll sort of speak more about that when I talk about Nepal as well. Let's just skip this slide because, the purpose or the idea for this presentation is for all of you to kind of read the report as well. So you'll find most of the information there. Talking about certain communities who are at higher risk of being stateless. This includes the Afghan refugees and Hazara ethnic minority and Roma community and ethnic Bengalis in Pakistan, and the Tibetan Sri Lankan refugees and ethnic communities living in the border in India, Dalit and Madhesi communities in Nepal, and Rohingyas obviously in so many different countries, especially in Bangladesh. And there are other communities like the Tibetan refugees and the Lhotshampas communities living in Nepal as well. And again, it's very similar causes. Like I said, be repeating everything. Discriminatory nationality laws, absence of legal safeguards, and citizenship stripping, administrative barriers, especially in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh, and the absence of naturalization process for stateless refugees. Now, I'm going to spend a slightly more time on Nepal because, like I said, I don't feel completely equipped or the right person to be talking about the SEAP, the entire SEAP report, but I do feel, I guess, more capable of talking about Nepal and South Asia. So that's why I wanted to focus more on Nepal, and all of this information that I've included here is available in the SEAP report. So what the regional and the sub-regional overviews don't talk about, and what the national sort of fact sheets talk about, are the details of the citizenship laws. So, I just said that I feel very uncomfortable when I sort of categorize or put certain countries in brackets, and the country fact sheets kind of allow us to get out of those brackets and give more details. So I just mentioned that Nepal has gender discriminatory laws, but it is a very complex form of discrimination where women cannot confer citizenship to their children or spouse in the same capacity as men. But there are certain conditions that have been imposed where they can confer citizenship. And the condition is that, if the father is Nepali, then women can confer citizenship. Yeah, it sounds pretty weird, doesn't it? The father is Nepali. It means that you have to somehow prove the father is Nepali, and then the women can confer, which essentially means the father needs to be Nepali. There's the other condition which says that if the father is of non-Nepali, if the father is a foreigner, the term uses foreigner, it's not non-Nepali. If the father is a foreigner and the mother is Nepali, then they can confer naturalized citizenship, not citizenship by descent, not citizenship by birth, but naturalized citizenship. But that depends on the discretion of the state, and in practice, those citizenships have not been issued. So essentially, if the mother is Nepali and the father is non-Nepali or a foreigner, then they don't have access to citizenship. So, and again, also want to acknowledge the fact that it's gender binary, sort of emphasizes marriage, and that's the way the law operates. And it sort of assumes that the parents are married, and the parents can only be either mother and father. And that's it's another issue with the law as well. And there's also, oh yeah, let's talk about the, where women can confer citizenship. So there's one condition where women can confer citizenship in Nepal, where if the father cannot be traced. So that's the term that has been used in the constitution and the citizenship law, that if the father cannot be traced, then mothers can confer citizenship, provided that the child was born and raised in Nepal. So that's a difficult one. What does that mean? The practical implication now is that the applicant, the child and the mother, or the mother, have to sign a self-declaration form saying that, oh, my husband or my father has abandoned the family, or I don't know who the biological father is, so can we get citizenship, or can my child get the citizenship? Again, extremely problematic, highly undignified. It compels women and the person to disclose confidential information that the state should not be asking. But that's not the end of the problem. The problem, again, is that if the information that they provide in terms of the self-declaration form, if that is proved to be false, then they can be penalized. They can be put behind prison for up to 3 years. And this does not solve anything, because so many issues, so many problems related to statelessness in Nepal, or children living with single mothers, is the father has abandoned the family and they know who the father is, but they have to say that the father cannot be traced. So this actually does not solve anything. And so we are working on the ground with an organization based in Nepal on this. And they've been struggling to support people to get access to citizenship. And all of them are sort of compelled to lie and say that, oh, our father is not traceable. And just to need to wait for some one person to file a case against them. And there are people, because, citizenship is related property. They have access to parental property. And access to other kind of rights. So that's the issue with the citizenship problem law in Nepal. And like I said, that's why I said it would be unfair to kind of categorize countries that, oh, this country has a discriminatory law, this country has this, because the complexity that comes with it is very different. And those are the kind of information we've been trying to highlight through the SEAP report, so that these information, on the one hand, depict what is actually there, but at the same time, it can be a helpful tool for advocacy for organizations, for other organizations if they want to get more information. So, interestingly, Nepal only reports 452 stateless persons to UNHCR. This includes all the Rohingya sort of refugees living in Nepal. And this, obviously, I can say for sure that it's not indicative of the actual number of stateless people in the country, because when I was working for this organization called FWLD, we did a study, and we, using the data from the national census and the data from the Ministry of Home Affairs, to calculate the total number of population and people who have been able to attain citizenship. And we found out that the estimated number of people without citizenship certificates, I'm not saying all of them are stateless, the estimation was around 6.7 million. At the end of 2021. It was a projection, we did the study in 2014, but it is, not 452. So it is sort of an indication of how the fact that, the numbers that are reported as stateless is not indicative of actual stateless population. But having said that, 6.7 million, not all of them are stateless. We did another study, sort of a household study as well. We asked, a sample of around 3,000 people, who reported that 20% of them said that they're ineligible to access citizenship. So those would have been actual stateless population, but there's no study that has been done on this. So 452 and 6.7 million is a sort of a big difference. So kind of indicates that the numbers that we are reporting through this report is always not sort of indicative of the actual stateless population. And that was the reason why we wanted to include this separate subsection called the persons at risk of statelessness. And also, in a way, not just would show them in numbers, but also mention that these are the communities that are at most risk of statelessness the Malaysian and the Dalit communities, and for several reasons. And I wanted to explain that as well. The other thing, in terms of the cause of the statelessness, I mean, one of the biggest reasons statelessness is the discriminatory nationality law. The constitution itself is discriminatory, so the citizenship laws are also discriminatory. And also, even for cases where, they've filed a case in court and the Supreme Court has said, oh, the person needs to be able to get citizenship through their mother, even those people face administrative barriers to get citizenship. Because it's a highly patriarchal sort of system, and most of the bureaucrats are men from a certain ethnic group, and they're like, oh, how can they be Nepali? Or so I think that's one of the biggest reasons. That's not just the laws that are there, but also the legal safeguards are not there, which would allow us to maybe file a case or report it to the right authorities. I mean, especially for foundlings, it's very difficult. There is a law that says foundlings can be citizens, but conditions are placed. Like foundlings, you have to either have a legal guardian or you have to be sort of adopted. And there's strict adoption laws, and legal guardianship is also very complicated. So there's so many, children who work in the streets, who work informally, who've been abandoned, who are not able to access citizenship. And this is a significant number of people as well. Finally, I just wanted to give a snapshot of the stakeholders section as well for Nepal. So these are some of the organizations we identified who are working on the issue of statelessness or citizenship in Nepal. We're now trying to categorize them, as you will see that we've pointed out that 2 of them are stateless-led or affected persons-led organization. Now we're sort of updating our website, or we have launched our website. When we launch our website, we'll be updating our website to categorize the different organizations into affected persons-led or status-led, and that are not led by stateless persons, and provide more sort of visibility to the work of the organizations that are status-led or affected persons-led, and try to sort of make them help them sort of connect with other organizations as well. So that, I think, brings me to the end of the presentation. Like I said, I really rushed to the South Asia section, and sort of because I wanted to make sure there's enough time for Q&A. So if you have any questions related to Nepal, to South Asia, to any of the South regions, I mean, like I said, I'll have to sort of go through the SEAP report itself to answer some of your questions. But in terms of the process, I would be happy to answer. And I just realized I just had one more slide, which was something I wanted to focus. I'm sorry, I forgot that I wanted to share my reflections as well. So yeah, I think yeah, this can take another webinar. So I'll try to be very brief. And I feel like I've kind of shared some of these reflections while I was going through the data as well. We're still figuring out the best way to make this accessible and reader-friendly. We kind of didn't realize that it's going to be such a dense report. And we're like, oh, does it actually help civil society organizations? Does it help academics? I mean, probably does not fulfill the rigor that's required for an academic work, but probably more dense for civil society work. And so who does it actually support? Who does it actually help? So we're sort of putting more thoughts into making it more accessible and reader friendly. So if some of you go through the report and if you have any suggestions, if you have any feedback, we'd be more than happy to do it, and also in a way discuss how this can be more sort of helpful for academic and academic organizations and in researchers and students as well. Because the reason why we wanted to sort of make sure that spend 40 more pages on the citations was we wanted to make sure it's helpful for academics and for them to be maybe the first sort of thing that they read, and for them to dive deeper after maybe going through this. So like I said, we're happy to sort of get more suggestions and thoughts. We still don't know if this or how helpful or what the impact of the report will be. And we're trying to engage with civil society organizations and especially stateless organizations to get their thoughts and consult with them to make this more effective. But like I said, it's the research, the whole process of working on this has been amazing. We've learned so much on the issue. I learned so much that we need to, there's more areas for us to do even more research. So, yeah, I think I think one decision we made was like, if we keep on doing this research, it'll probably take 5 more years and we'll not be able to publish anything. So then we decided to halt and just publish and make this sort of a living document, which we will update every year and try to add more information, especially information related to, that kind of humanizes stateless people as opposed to presenting them in terms of data and numbers and, just laws. So we are trying to get more case studies done and try to get more sort of quotes and voices from stateless persons as well, but also do it in a way, do it in a more collaborative way with stateless organizations. One reason we haven't done this is we don't want to exploit their resources or exploit their labor as well, and we're in a position where we can compensate for their work, which is something we're trying to do, and make it more of a co-creation as opposed to us sort of doing desk research and presenting it as, oh, this is how statelessness is. So yeah, I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for listening. Really looking forward to answering any questions you might have, or discussing anything that you thought might be interesting, or happy to sort of dive deeper into anything that you thought might be worth discussing. So passing it over to Adil. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Subin. That was fantastic. Just please join me in this sort of disembodied webinar format to thank Subin for a fantastic presentation, and thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Adil. This was such a pleasure, and thank you so much for the opportunity.